7 o'clock we will commence the meeting. So I would like to welcome everyone to the Planning Committee meeting of Wyndham City Council this Tuesday, 8th of February 2022. In the spirit of reconciliation, before we begin this meeting, I would like to acknowledge the peoples of the Kulin Nation as the traditional owners of the land on which we meet, and pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging. Could you all stand for the opening prayer, please? We pray for guidance in the Council's decision making to achieve the best outcomes for the people of Wyndham. Please be seated. I would like to welcome members of the gallery, press, councillors and staff in attendance here this evening. Please note this meeting is being recorded and live streamed on the internet. This recording will be archived and made available on Council's website, and whilst all care has been taken to ensure that your privacy is maintained, please be aware that your presence may be recorded. The format of the meeting this evening will be each of the items will be heard separately. Council officers will present an overview of the reports. Registered submitters will then be invited to speak. Councillors will then have an opportunity to ask any questions of clarification, and then we will go to the vote. Mr. CEO, any apologies for this evening's meeting?
No, Mr. Mayor, there are no apologies for this evening's meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. CEO. And given that we've got a quorum of councillors here, the meeting will proceed. So, councillors, item 3 on the agenda is declaration by councillors of disclosure of conflict of interest or conflicting personal interest in any item on the agenda.
I have a conflict in item 6.3.
Thank you, Councillor Hegadich. Item 4 is a confirmation of the minutes of the previous meeting. The motion is that the minutes of the Planning Committee meeting held on Tuesday 14th December 2021, as prepared and circulated, be confirmed. Councillors, can I have a mover, please? Councillor Hegadich. Seconder, Councillor Ramesh. Discussion, councillors? No discussion, which be on errors only, of course. I put the motion to a vote. All those in favour? Against? The motion is carried. Item 5 is verbal submission from applicants or objectors. Mr. CEO, we have, I believe we have some people wishing to make verbal submissions this evening.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, we have one person wishing to speak for item 6.1 and one person wishing to speak for item 6.2 on behalf of the applicants.
Thank you, Mr. CEO. So item 6, councillors, is the strategic reports. The first one is the planning permit application WYP 13009/21, use of the land for a Shisha lounge, place of assembly, liquor licence and reduction to car parking requirements at 6 Corundum Lane, Truganina. The report commences on page 7, it goes to 32, recommendations on page 8 with attachments 33 to 34. Mr. Van Til, I believe, is going to, the Manager of Planning and Building, to provide an overview of this report.
Thank you, councillors. Good evening. This application is for a proposed place of assembly, referred to as a Shisha bar, at number 6, just the lights got to me, 6 Corundum Lane, Truganina. Councillors, the report is, as presented in front of you, provides a summary of the general planning principles, and the recommendation is on page 8. Councillors, the application itself, in terms of a place of assembly, the use as such, in terms of, I guess, the argument or the position put forward by the officer's report is that in terms of recreation, in terms of an additional function or an additional facility to be utilised within the municipality, is a worthy type use. Again, as per the recommendation, this particular application is considered to be inappropriate for the specifics of this area. Councillors, as you're aware, We've had a number of applications that deal with non-industrial uses within this particular precinct. And again, from the point of view of this application, it is considered that on merit, as for the reasons outlined in the recommended refusal on page 8, is that whilst the application might be supported in a more, if you like, commercial or activity centre area, in an industrial area it falls short. And as per the reasons in the refusal, primarily it falls short against policy, again, policy for promoting and encouraging industrial uses / employment uses within this precinct. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. We will now hear from the applicant, and can I please ask that, well, you don't have to introduce yourself because I will, state your interest in the application. Once you step up to speak, and you'll have 5 minutes to speak. So, Mr. Sriram Kumar, so you have 5 minutes.
Good evening, Honourable Councillor, CEO, and all the respected councillors. I'm speaking on behalf of Amandeep Kaur for Shisha and Glassy Junction. So primarily, I want to say that the concerns that you have raised have been addressed by the town planner. I won't go onto them in detail, but firstly, I'd like to say that we're not changing the character of the industrial precinct because there's already a boutique, a tobacco shop, real estate, and a grocery store in the precinct itself, which we having a shisha bar or shisha place rather does not change the character of the precinct. So that's the primary point. And secondly, I'd like to say that we're creating employment opportunities for people locally in Wyndham. So, and on the bigger picture, we will be, raising GST and revenue for the government and the tax office itself. So we're creating employment opportunity, which I think is important. Sorry, can you hear me, guys? Thank you, sorry, yeah.
Could we try the sound up a little bit, if we could, please? Won't have to stand as close. Stop the clock. Any? Give you 6 minutes. So what I'm going to do is extend your time another minute, seeing we've interrupted you. So you've got till 6 minutes. I'll call you with a warning at 5, sir. Thank you.
Certainly, sir. And also, I would like to mention that this will be a nicotine-free place. There will not be any nicotine in the shishas that Aman will be serving. And also, I want to say that Aman will be having security on the night. She anticipates that we'll be busy because I believe the council has raised the point that there were issues where police were involved. So she will be having security just to alleviate that concern of yours. And this is a women-operated business and owned by women. So Aman believes, and I do believe too, that women will feel safe attending this place for relaxation and recreation. And sorry, I'm a bit disorganized. So those are the main points you'd like to raise. And in summary of covering all the other points, I'd like to say that you will be helping a woman achieve financial independence. She's got many reasons why she wants to be financially independent, but one of the main reasons why is like she has a mother overseas who doesn't have insurance and things like that medically. It's not in India, it's not like here. So she'd like to support her, and she finds it awkward and difficult asking her partner for money every time. And also, she signed a 5-year lease with the real estate, which she has been paying rent for the past 7 months. And to cover that, she's been working double shifts, and she's working actually tonight from 11:30 p.m. to 6 a.m. tomorrow morning at an aged care facility just to cover the rents. and it will be a major setback for her. Like, if the decision is not in her favor, she's already paid like $5,000 to the town planner for the paperwork and correspondence with yourselves. So I will leave all this information in your able hands, and we hope for a favorable decision. And she just wants to follow her passion, and she wants to have financial independence. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you, Shriram. Councillors, any questions before Shriram leaves the podium? Councillor Setkowski.
So as our council officer pointed out, this area was developed with the intention of providing the appropriate facilities for light and medium industrial activities, the businesses of that nature.
Sure.
Why was this location chosen for a hospitality venue?
Certainly. So this location was chosen because of the points I just made before. So there's like...
Can you speak up a little bit, please?
Sure. There's a few Indian restaurants in the precinct. There's a grocery store, there's a boutique, and there's a lot of retail foot traffic, and also real estate agencies and things like that. So I don't know what you classify an industrial precinct, like something like a car garage or like something like, a tire shop or something. I don't know, but like this precinct has all the businesses which I've just mentioned, like, the restaurants, and those restaurants are already, providing, alcohol and all, beverages. So, and we intend to be doing that as well with a license and providing. Number 4 in 6 Corundum is a restaurant. Right opposite that is another restaurant called Angara, just across that. So one of them is called Bukhara and one of them is called Angara, and there's a huge Indian grocery store in the precinct as well, and we expect a lot of foot traffic there. Could you tell me what you classify as industrial a business in the industrial precinct, sir?
I thought you would have come prepared for that question. So, thank you. Any other questions, councillors? No further questions. Thank you, Shriram.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. So, councillors, as I alluded to, the recommendations on page 8. So, councillors, can I have a mover for the motion, please? Councillor Hegeditch. A seconder. Councillor Gillian. Councillor Hegeditch.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As a planning authority, we need to make a decision on the information in front of us. As much as I can sympathise with the applicant's financial position, that isn't a consideration that we need to take into account this evening. Based on the planning application and the planning principles, I will be supporting the recommendation this evening.
Thank you, Councillor Hegeditch. Councillor Gillian, as a seconder, did you wish to speak?
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I think, in essence, as has already been rightly pointed out, the nature of the zoning of this site... the nature of this site, subject site, in conjunction with the employment precinct structure plan, does make this recommendation the only option for council, in my opinion, to ultimately adopt. And in fairness to the wide-ranging applications we have seen in the vicinity of this subject site that have been upheld and also set aside by VCAT, there is a variation in opinion around the actual adherence to the precinct structure plan. Nevertheless, this example is a very clear-cut one, and I have had a very consistent voting record that where it does not meet the precinct structure plan principles and, of course, relevant planning provisions outlined in the resolution, then I simply cannot support it. This is a good example of one that I think is very unlikely to be upheld at VCAT if it were to be challenged. And finally, I do put on the record my sympathies to the applicant. I have seen the correspondence that talks to the nature of the contract that has been signed for this location. is a very unfortunate personal set of circumstances, but inevitably, as Councillor Hegeditch has put on the record, we have to vote on the basis of being a responsible authority, and that's why I support the resolution. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gilgan. Councillor, is there any further speakers against this motion? Any further speakers for it? Councillor Marcus.
Thank you. I think the report before us tonight, it's very clear-cut. I haven't voted for anything that has come before us on other issues in these precincts. This is an industrial area. I think we have to make sure that we make it very clear to everybody that's what we want put into these areas. Again, I will echo the comments of Councillor Gilligan and Councillor Hegeditch. This is a very sad situation, but sadly, we have to go on the planning issues and not on personal issues. And so I have to support this recommendation before us tonight.
Thank you, Councillor Marcus. Councillor, is there any further discussion for the recommendation as it's? Councillor McIntyre.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's very important that obviously all applicants do appropriate due diligence. It's not a case of just looking around an environment and seeing what appears to be there and deciding that seems appropriate. I feel very much for as well for the applicant. If somebody is not sure, we have a planning department, you can ask these questions, and to me it is just very disappointing that the applicant obviously appears to have been given poor advice, but as other councillors has pointed out, although I do feel for the applicant as well, it is appropriate that appropriate planning decision making happens here, and therefore I'll be supporting the officer's recommendation. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor McIntyre. Councillor, is there any further speakers for this motion? Councillor Hill.
This is a heartbreaking case. I really sympathise with the applicant. I would like to support a woman who intends to become financially independent. However, in terms of the applicant getting advice from her own town planner, the advice was inaccurate, unfortunately. I urge future residents to write to council directly for questions about planning in future. I have to support officers' accommodation as a responsible decision maker. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Hill. Councillors, any further discussion? There being no further discussion, I put it to the vote. All those in favour of the recommendation? Against the motion? Sorry, Councillor Ramesh, against? Against, I beg your pardon. The motion is carried. Thank you. Councillors, the next item on the agenda is planning permit application WIP 12824/21, use and development of the land for the purposes of a restricted recreational facility, restricted place of assembly and food and drink premises cafe, reduction to the car parking requirement and display of advertising signage at 1069 Sayers Road, Tarneet. The report commences on page 35, goes to 69, recommendation 36 to 44 with attachments 78 to 81. Mr Van Til, if you could provide an overview of the report, please.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Councillors, the application...
Microphone's not working, I think, Mr Van Til. You've got your mask on, maybe?
How's that? Oh.
My voice is a bit deeper than yours, or louder, I should say.
Thank you. The application as presented is for a restricted place of assembly and food and drink premises cafe and reduction of car parking and the display of advertising signs at 1069 Sayers Road, Tarneet. Councillors, this application and the nature of this application, for those that are familiar with the Alamander estate in Point Cook, the model is almost identical in terms of the provision of the facilities. In this particular situation, you'll note that the facilities include a gymnasium, a pool, barbecue, play areas, as well as multi-purpose rooms. The cafe referred to in the application is a cafe that is open to all members of or all residents of the Alamora estate, as well as the general public. So whilst part of the restriction, hence the term restricted place of assembly, is for residents of the estate, the cafe is available for everybody to use. Councillors, in terms of the design considerations and the negotiations between the applicant and council, in particular council's design and landscaping team, was to take advantage of what is primarily shown in the Riverdale Precinct Structure Plan as a large tract of open space to the east of this site, and also a linear corridor to the north of the site. So in actual fact, what has happened with the design of this particular proposal is that it opens up to a north-facing aspect onto a linear path, which was part of the negotiations and part of the design for this application. Councillors, the recommendation is to support the application, bearing in mind though that the application in front of you this evening is for the built form in its own right. At some point in the future there will be a further application or a further requirement in terms of the way that the owners' corporation will manage this particular building, but that is the subject of a later application or a later request. So, councillors, again, just in summing up, the model is based on the Alamanda place of assembly located in Point Cook. The application accords with the provisions of the Riverdale Precinct Structure Plan, and again with the recommendation to support the application with various conditions that ensure that the built form and the ongoing operation of the centre accords with relevant and suitable planning permit conditions. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. Now, councillors, we'll hear from the applicant. Will Nichols, sir, you have 5 minutes, and at the end of that, there'll be an opportunity for councillors, should they wish to ask you some questions of clarification. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor and councillors, and thank you for your time tonight. I'm a Senior Development Manager at Villawood Properties, speaking in favour of the application. I'd like to offer our experience with owners' corporations. We have a considerable 25-odd year experience in creating these and developing these sort of developments. We have, as Peter did mention, we've developed the Alamanda estate in Point Cook, which has been up and running for a good 10 or 15 years on its own without any development assistance. We subdivide greenfield OCs, owners' corporations, to build residence clubs, as Peter alluded to, places where the local residents can meet and engage with one another. These typically include, as Peter mentioned, the function area, pool, gym, parents' lounge, cafe, depending on their circumstances. They are places where residents can meet and residents can socialise, exercise, or also relax. This is why we've put forward this application in this instance. We found that Residents Club achieve 3 things, the first being that they allow a focal point for the local community. They bring people together, including children, in a safe and supervised environment. Secondly, they promote a healthy lifestyle. The exercise equipment allows people to keep active, areas to forge connections from scratch. These Residents Club allow those social interactions to actually occur. We find that, as I said, they bring a sense of community and of belonging. The example of Alamanda and Point Cook shows that an OC can work very successfully. Facilities are well used, well maintained. The residents actively and enthusiastically use the club. Function room is regularly used for weddings and other parties. And this is what we seek to replicate. In Alamanda, there are group classes, book clubs, there are language clubs, workshops. It's very organic. Meanwhile, the Owners Corporation is run by an Owners Corporation Committee, which is enthusiastic members, and the members of the Owners Corporation in general pay their fees. The OC is standing on its own 2 feet, it is thriving and gives clear benefit to the community. The entire subdivision is within an owners corporation and all lots have entitlements and liabilities, thus owning the owners corporation. The owners corporation fees are collected by an owners corporation manager who has the responsibility of day-to-day management of the corporation and of the residents club. The manager is answerable to the OC committee elected by the members of their owners corporation. This is the same structure in Alamanda, as Peter alluded to, that we are seeking to replicate in Sayers Road in Tarneet. Our proposal in Tarneet includes, as Peter did say, a gym, pool, cafe, function room, change rooms. It has been located deliberately within the project to maximise the livability of the club and the residents, and to enjoy the estate around it. We've found that the structure of a greenfield residential owners corporation is that it is not economically sustainable for any lots less than 1,000, and we find that in experience that we need to keep fees affordable to make all people within the development able to make anybody who lives in it affordable, keeping in mind their economic circumstances. We understand that Council has concern...
You have 1 minute left, Will.
Thank you. I understand Council has concern regarding existing or future owners corporations, given that existing clubs may find it difficult to maintain and upkeep their assets, and as such seek to transfer those assets to Council, including maintenance liability. In such a case, I would note that the owners corporation has the option of winding up, selling its assets. It is not Council's responsibility to come up after and clean up a residents club that, for whatever circumstance, has not worked. We are at Villawood very cognisant of the fact that we need to create owners corporations and residents clubs that can wash their own face. It's not for Council to clean up. The example at Alamanda shows that greenfield residential owners corporations can work. Villawood urges Council to support the creation in this instance. Thank you for your time.
Gee, with 2 seconds to go, that's pretty good. Thank you, Will. Councillors, any questions? Councillor Gilligan?
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Thanks, Will. I'm sure you're not surprised I'd be the one asking a question on this item. So look, my question really is around the ownership structure of this proposed development. And to provide context, there are 2 types of owners corporations models we're seeing here in the city. One where the developer themselves actually own the building and then lease it out to the lots while still maintaining ownership for the entirety of the building's life. And then there are others that ownership is determined by the lots of an estate. Which of those 2 models would be the model that's adopted by Villawood, and is that the same model adopted at Alamanda?
It is similar to I believe the proposal is similar to Alamanda. I believe the legislation has changed in that period, but the land will be subdivided as common property, and the facility of the land will be owned by the owners corporation.
Thank you.
Yeah. Councillors, any further questions? Councillor McIntyre.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Will, can you please clarify for me why there was the requirement to reduce the number of car parking spaces by such a large amount, given this is a greenfield site and you could presumably plan it in any way you chose to? Thank you.
The site is located on the corner of 2 connector roads, one of which has an active open space on the other side. There is not a large amount of residential lots immediately around the proposed site, and there is enough on-street car parking in our view.
So my looking at the plans were that there was plans that the residential housing would abut the property as a future planning use. Is that the case?
Correct.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McIntyre. Councillors, any further questions before Will steps away from the podium? Thank you.
Very good. Thank you for your time.
Right. So, councillors, as I said, the recommendation is on 36 to 44. So, can I have a mover for this motion, please? Councillor Gilligan. And Councillor Ramesh, were you happy to go seconder?
Yep, that's fine.
Councillor Gilligan.
Thanks very much, Mr Mayor. I'll only say that I intend to vote in favour of this resolution for the most part based on it obviously meeting the requirements of the relevant planning scheme provisions, but also that I'm satisfied that the nature of this application is met with an applicant that meets the social responsibility expectations that should rest, in my opinion, with these types of developments, particularly given that they are ultimately designed to deal with out-of-sequence development, as was mentioned before, where there is no access to what I class to be mainstream services that cannot be provided by government. And I don't necessarily accept the argument sometimes that these services are above what would be reasonably expected in our community. Nevertheless, I intend to vote in favour of the proposed resolution. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Gilligan. Councillor Ramesh.
Just to note that I will be voting in favour of this recommendation. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Ramesh. Councillors, any further speakers against the motion? Any further speakers for it? Councillor McIntyre.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Mine's actually a mixed one between the two. I believe what's proposed is a flagship building for the estate. I'm sure all the residents are very excited to get this element. I've seen it on YouTube. You can see it on all the marketing material, and I'm sure it's something that most will enjoy. I am very aware of the Alamander development that Villawood has already done. To me, though, it is extremely disappointing that developers continue not to provide the facilities that they are supposed to do so or required to do so, and the reduction of car parking spaces. Here it is about a third of what is required. I would suggest as councillors and myself, in particular in relation to these, that we constantly deal with the outcomes of some of these decisions where the impact on the community is often actually only felt after the developer has sold all their lots and withdrawn. Looking at the design plans, to me, it looks like you didn't supply the required number of car parking so you could release more land for residential houses. To me, I hope the surrounding residents aren't impacted too heavily by what I view as a poor choice. I will be supporting the council's recommendation, but I really feel it is quite disturbing that developers still continue not to supply what they are supposed to. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor McIntyre. Councillor, is there any further discussion for this motion? No further discussion. I put it to the vote. All those in favour? Against? The motion is carried. Councillor Hegerich. We'll close the door, please. Thank you. Councillors, item 6.3 is the Riverwalk Development Amendment, the Riverwalk Amendment to Development Plan. Reports on page 82 to 89, recommendation page 83, attachments 90 to 159. Mr. Childs, who's the manager of Urban Futures, you're going to be providing an overview of the report, please.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. So this report, councillors, is in relation to the updating and amendment of the Riverwalk Development Plan. The development plan is over 12 years old and is a document that has had some problems in terms of its workability and usability, particularly around open space and certain other elements. The changes that are proposed by the development plan include the creation of a 2.64 hectare active open space reserve that will be integrated and alongside the Discovery Centre site at Riverwalk. The co-location of a 0.05 hectare community facility site with that same general area, and the redesign of the Riverwalk Town Centre to better integrate the supermarket site with the Discovery Centre site, as well as improving pedestrian links within the town centre and to the Discovery Centre site. The proposed development plan also looks at replacing the Southern Employment Precinct with a residential retirement village that will result in more diverse housing and provide affordable housing, as well as providing some employment opportunities. The development plan is one that will modernise the statutory planning framework for the site and enable it to operate more effectively and provide greater certainty and clarity to the stakeholders that will have to use the document. Thank you.
Thank you, Aaron. Councillors, do I have a mover for this item, please? Councillor Gillian.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I intend to move an alternate resolution to the one proposed, which has been circulated.
You'll take it as being read, so you're so moving that now?
Yes, please.
Okay. A seconder?
No. Sorry, Mr Mayor, I was just asking, could it possibly be read only because the general public often don't understand what is being proposed, so I just thought it would be a good idea to be read. Sorry.
Happy for that to happen.
Thank you.
Okay,
yep,
thanks.
That's fine.
Thanks. Okay, it is as follows. One, that the Planning Committee endorse the Riverdale Estate Development Plan, January 2022, subject to a modified development plan being submitted to show the following. A, the reinstatement of the employment precinct on the southeast corner of the estate as shown in the existing development plan for Riverdale Estate, Werribee, DP 0086/09, approved by Wyndham City Council on 2 August 2010. And two, that Council seek written confirmation from Development Victoria on their position in considering a future planning scheme amendment to reflect the intended zoning of the subject site in accordance with the existing development plan for Riverdale Estate in light of this decision.
Thank you, Councillor Gillian. Councillors, do we have a seconder for this alternate? Councillor Shaw. Councillor Gillian.
Thank you very much, Mr Mayor. This proposed alternate is really a conversation about more jobs and less housing. It's important to put on the record that the only change that is proposed here relates to the Southern Employment Precinct in terms of ensuring that the original plans back in 2010 are honoured by the developer and applicant of this proposed amendment to the development plan. I want to put on the record that we are, if you vote in favour of this, you're absolutely in favour of the relocation of the community centre, the redesign of the Riverwalk Town Centre, which we all know from residents out there is really important around better integration of that supermarket site, as well as the Discovery Centre site, which of course Council has an important role to play. It improves the pedestrian links, which is an important contribution, and of course ensures that we've got a further 2.64 hectares of active open space unlocked for our community. But the negative of this, the, if you will, important detail, devil in the detail, is the decision by Development Victoria, a Victorian government, a state-owned developer that is seeking to walk away from the creation of jobs in favour of residential housing. As part of this, we know in correspondence between Development Victoria and this council, that the application today does not look at whether or not the land in the southern employment area should be designated for industrial or commercial use. It is currently general residential zone. There is a real estate agent out selling this site right now, suggesting that this site is potentially available for residential housing. And in my opinion, this council has to take a stand on developers that do not honour their word and commitment as per the original proposition back in 2010. And when I referred to the original proposition, the original current plan, it stated, and I quote, and I'm quoting from the 2010 document, that there are 2,300 or more dwellings proposed for the entire Riverdale estate will generate around 2,750 jobs, or 1 to 2 jobs per household. and it recognises the importance of job creation as being part of the housing that has to come with this. People need to have jobs in addition to the housing that's ultimately approved. And then it goes on, it talks about the importance of the creation of jobs and goes into detail as part of the development plan, a commitment that was made by the state government-owned developer to look at a light industrial zone in this space, which could include industry, office warehouses, and restricted retail uses. Instead, what this current proposal is seeking to do is to install more housing as opposed to more jobs. And this council must continue to be active and vocal, in my opinion, about putting jobs before housing, because that is exactly what the community has been asking us to do, or at least in the conversations I have with community, for a long, long time. And this is now within the remit of this council to make this call. And I'm asking councillors, as part of adopting this resolution, that we do just that. And finally, it is important that this state-owned developer puts on the record, will they support the creation of jobs as per the original intended development? Now, the state has benefited from stamp duty. It has benefited from federal taxes as well. And it's important that as part of that conversation and that approval back in 2010, that the jobs came with it. And we often say that developers should meet their fair share and should also make sure they honour their promises. That applies to government-owned developers too, and they should be held at a higher standard than private enterprise. And that is why I do encourage yet again that Development Victoria does come to the table and honour the original commitment that was made in 2010 around ensuring that this space remains an employment precinct, not a place for more housing. So I'll leave it there, Mr Mayor. Thank you very much, and I look forward to the conversation.
Thank you, Councillor Gilligan. Councillor Shaw, given you were the seconder, do you wish to?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I think I've got that right. Thank you. I think, unfortunately, I'll be supporting the amendment tonight, but I think, unfortunately, not zoning this appropriately and zoning it general residential has really been a fatal mistake here for the people of Riverwalk and more broadly for Wyndham as well in relation to this employment precinct. It has a general residential zoning on it, and Councillor Gilligan has alluded to that when he was speaking, and for that puts us in a very difficult position because Development Victoria don't want to change the zoning and have now said that they're updating the development plan to match the planning controls. So for us, really, I think I would have liked to have seen some more advocacy around trying to actually rezone this appropriately to keep the employment precinct as it is. And if the amendment gets across tonight, that's certainly where I'd like to see council officers put forward their time in doing that. It's a huge problem we have across this city where we have too much general residential zoning, not enough to actually support employment and industrial precincts. But obviously that's going to be a conversation for another day. What I also am concerned about a little is that in the report it does say that we'll replace the Southern Employment Precinct with a residential/retirement village that will result in more diverse housing and provide more affordable housing, as well as provide some employment opportunities. Well, I think the employment opportunities are quite limited in this instance, but what is a residential village if it's not a retirement village? So what does a residential village actually mean? When we talk about more diverse housing, does that mean social housing? And for me, that isn't really clear in this document and this updated development plan, certainly. So I'll be supporting the amendment tonight. I won't be supporting the original recommendation, and I think Councillor Gilligan made some good points. There are some really good amendments to this development plan, but I certainly have a number of concerns about...
Councillor Shaw, sorry to interrupt you, but our remoteness has decided to restart itself, so I have no option at this stage. I will allow you to
It's going really good then.
to continue, but I need to actually adjourn the meeting until we can reset our IT side of it and have Councillor Mufford and Barrera to attending the meeting. So,
or we just continue without
well,
councillors?
we need to give them the opportunity to be able to attend. So for those purposes, Mr CEO, am I correct procedure to adjourn this meeting for, say, 5 minutes?
I think so. I'm just looking, Mr Mayor. Hopefully this won't take very long to kick this back into gear, but...
I'll second that.
Well, it may not take 5 minutes, but
Yep.
yes.
Vote, don't we?
Yep.
We have to vote to adjourn, do we not?
I do, well, either
Yeah.
or, yeah. I'm happy to suspend standing orders, yes. So I'm moving it, you're seconding it. All those in favour? Thank you very much, councillors, and we will... We'll come back, okay, we'll come back as quickly as possible. Well, actually... Sorry, seconder that we reinstate standing orders. Councillor Gilligan, all those in favour? Thank you very much. Councillor Mahfood and Councillor Barrera, we had some issues, so I adjourned the meeting temporarily so we could allow the restart from our lovely computer, and Councillor Shaw is going to continue. I'm not sure where you actually missed from, but Councillor Shaw is going to start from about roughly halfway where she was. So we'll give her
Mr.
another.
Mayor, the last thing we heard was Councillor Shaw talking about the proposal for an aged care facility.
Thank you, Councillor Barrera. Does that give you a starting point, Councillor Shaw?
It does.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor, for that. I suppose my final point on this item was around the replacement of the Southern Employment Precinct with what is in the report with a residential/retirement village. And I think that's very interesting words in this report, that it's not just a retirement village, that there is residential there, that will result in more diverse housing and provide more affordable housing, as well as to provide some employment opportunities. Well, I think the employment opportunities are going to be limited. But I suppose my question is, what is a residential village if it's not a retirement village? And when we talk about affordable housing and more diverse housing, is Development Victoria really talking about social housing? And for me, that's a question that I have in my mind. in relation to this, and I wonder if people in Riverwalk, if that's actually what they think or what they expected when they bought into this development. I'd say probably not. And these are the questions that I certainly have in relation to this. So I will be supporting Councillor Gilligan's amendment in relation to this item. I do think we should be asking some more questions around what a residential retirement village actually means, that is replacing this employment precinct. And ultimately, in the end, as the future-focused economy portfolio holder, protecting our employment precincts is very important. We've had that discussion a couple of times this evening in relation to our industrial zones and in our industrial precincts in terms of holding developers to account in terms of what they're delivering. This is another case of this as well in relation to an employment precinct. And we know the issues we're having around East Werribee in terms of delivery, which has been going for many, many years. And to see this actually come out is really disappointing. So I'll be supporting the amendment tonight. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Shaw. And in the spirit of take two, I think that's a wrap.
Thank you.
Councillor, is there any further discussion against this motion? Oh, sorry, this alternate? Is there any against? Against, yes. Councillor Marcus? Yep, okay, thank you.
This development goes back much further than 2010. None of you were sitting around this council chamber when this was brought to us. We did not want this development to go ahead because we were concerned about the traffic coming into the Werribee CBD. We've talked with, and it was Vic Urban in those days, and we've had our council officers have worked extremely hard with the development people out at Vic Urban and now Development Victoria. We've talked about roads of how we're going to get them across the river. And now we've got a very good development out there. How many people have been notified about this change that you have put forward tonight? I have a lot of close people that ring me when they're concerned about everything, and I don't think they know anything about this. I think what we have before us by the council officers is exceptionally good because this is going to update and modernise everything. They're going to have a lovely strip centre down in Newmarket Road where there will be employment. We, at the moment, can't rent out one office. Everybody wants to work from home. So I'm very happy. We've been out there many times, opening to lovely parks. They've got the best water park in this thing. Development Victoria are very good developers. But what I like about them is they work very closely with our council officers. And the other thing is, when they wanted to chop down all those beautiful cypress, we went out on site with them and we saved those cypress trees through our work with the council officers and Development Victoria. They have planted trees when we've come up and asked for it. I think Development Victoria certainly will work in with the council officers, and if there's a concern about the housing and the employment, I'm quite sure that they will be happy to work with us. This will create another 2.64 hectare public open space reserve for active recreation that is integrated with the Discovery Centre. We have this beautiful Discovery Centre out there. Don't know whether any of the rest of you have been there to see it, but I've had many meetings out there. That will be a showcase. What we have planned in this report tonight will enhance all of that. Okay, please let me finish. It will support the relocation of the community centre from the east of the town centre to be co-located with the 2.64 hectare public open space reserve, providing opportunities to integrate the community space centre and open space. It will support the redesign of the Riverwalk Town Centre to better integrate the supermarket site with the Discovery Centre. How good would that be? There is a lot of employment, as well as improved pedestrian links within the town centre to the Discovery Centre. We want to make that Discovery Centre a highlight of this city. So it is important, councillors, that we consider all of these positive outcomes.
Can you wrap up, please?
Yes, I'm nearly finished. Together and consider the whole package that is in front of us. So I support the outcomes, the recommendations to endorse the Riverwalk Estate Development Plan please think of the people that live out there now. A retirement village, if it's a retirement village, our older people are wanting out of their bigger houses into smaller. How great would that be? Thank you.
Councillor, is there any further discussion? Any speakers for this? Councillor McIntyre.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I will be supporting the amendment this evening. My understanding is that the element we're talking about in the amendment is just regarding that economic rezoning area. It's not lots of the elements that Councillor Marcus is talking about, which I think is very important to update and would be of great benefit to the wider community. When I look at things like the Development Victoria 5 policy pillars, when I'm looking at the Riverwalk Estate Development Plan, the second one is economic development. Development Victoria will facilitate and deliver projects which drive economic activity in employment zones. For Development Victoria to say there was a mistake, or there is a mistake in the zoning, so it was zoned as residential, and we're not now going to support it being employment, to me just seems bizarre. I mean, at the end of the day, we're trying to ask private developers to deliver what they should. Why should the state government not be asked to deliver exactly what it should? We're looking for local jobs, 20-minute neighbourhood. My understanding when I look at this document is that it was originally looked at being light industrial. It wasn't looked at as being office areas. So to me, I believe this is an important amendment and I would be supporting it. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor McIntyre. Councillor, is there any further speakers against this motion? Any further speakers for it? There being no further speakers, Councillor Gilligan, you've got the right of reply.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. And as Councillor McIntyre, I think quite aptly put, this is really about more jobs and less housing. It's about a state-owned developer honouring its word just as much as we ask private developers to honour theirs. I accept the point that Councillor Marcus is saying about the alternative option, but I simply don't support an alternative option. To do so would take away the opportunity of the creation of those jobs over the prospect of more housing. In terms of what that may look like in that space, I ask councillors to think about the applications that we've lost at VCAT just across the road. Green wedge zone being approved for a McDonald's and a KFC. When people enter Werribee, I want them to see jobs, not housing. I want to see the opportunity that comes here in Werribee as they head in, and hopefully they go down to Watton Street and they engage in our city centre. But that is taken away if Development Victoria does not come to the table and commit to delivering what it essentially promised back when this was originally approved. The community, as Councillor Marcus pointed out, opposed the application for housing in this space, sure. But it came with a promise, and that promise was that this site would be delivered for jobs, that there would be an employment precinct area. And just like we see commonly across this city, the housing comes in, and then when it comes to the social and economic infrastructure with it, it's left to the whim, or it's flogged off and ultimately diminished in terms of what was originally promised. That is the opportunity we have before us this evening about encouraging a state-owned developer to honour their word, to come to the table and engage in a future planning scheme amendment, which they admit was an error made by somebody, that this ultimately shouldn't have been zoned for general residential housing. So it is a great opportunity to work collaboratively with Development Victoria to approve just about everything, everything but this section in the proposed improvements, which will improve Riverwalk. But by coming to the table as a state-owned developer and saying we will work with the council on a future planning scheme amendment is what this does, what would be the endorsement that this council has taken, and an advocacy campaign, as Councillor Shaw has said, that we should absolutely commit to if we want to have any hope of holding private developers to account, let alone a state-owned one. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Gilligan. Councillors, I now put it to the vote. All those in favour of the alternate recommendation? Against? The motion is carried.
I'll call for a division.
Okay. All those who voted in favour of the alternate, please raise your hands. Councillor Barrera and Mahfood have, yep, thank you very much. So Councillor Barrera, Mahfood, McIntyre, Gilligan, Hill, Ramesh, Maynard, Shaw, Zetkowski, and against, Councillor Marcus. Thank you. Alrighty. Councillors, item 7 on the agenda is confidential business. Could we bring Councillor... Oh, he's beat me to the punch. Councillor Hegarty's back. Thank you very much. So item 7, councillors, is confidential business. There is nil. Item 8 is a close of meeting, and I declare the meeting closed at 8:01. And glory be, we've got another hour of training. Thank you, councillors.